Alrighty, everybody. We are on tonight with the woman, the legend, Sue Zoldak. How you feeling, Sue?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. That was it. It's always like I feel like you throw me off with the intro every single time. Like how many times have we done this? I don't know how I feel. You know that I'm in the middle of like living in two different places right now,
That's
so
never fun.
it's not fun. And I'm supposed to be moving from one state to another next week, and I just fired my moving company and hired a different one. For It's too long of a story to tell, but it's needless to say, it's been a little bit stressful
Yeah.
because it just isn't going as well planned as I thought it was going to go. But you know, it's never the end of the world. So it's only moving physical things,
Well,
like
I noticed that you carefully timed your move for after the election so you wouldn't have overlap with your work and your move. How's that going for you?
you know, I always somehow think this is a great idea, right? Where the last time I moved over Thanksgiving weekend, and I thought that's a great idea because I'll have like 5 days off of work. That wasn't a great idea, folks. Don't ever.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert, especially not when you're supposed to be cooking Thanksgiving dinner and then you have to open up all the boxes for the kitchen and like find all your pots and pans. And then your mother's there and she's the kind of person that just sticks everything in the cupboard wherever, like with no rhyme or reason. Like she was just like, does it really matter? Like she would just put like a few glasses here, a few glasses there, a few plates here, a few plates there. Like she's that kind of person. Like, well, does it
Yeah.
matter that all the plates are in one cupboard? I'm like, what, are you mad? Of course it matters, you know. Um, but you know, don't ever do that. No combination of those things made sense. But then somehow this year I thought, oh yeah, like right after the election, it'll make sense to that'll be the best time to move before.
Legislative session, right?
Exactly. I knew you knew what I was gonna say. I thought, because what I do, my busy time of year happens kind of January through March or April again, because that's when legislators hold their state sessions. So for those of you that don't know, I run an ad agency that basically helps people deliver messages around policy issues that are being voted on bills in the 50 state houses. So we're really busy when those state houses are in session, which is for most states just the beginning half of the year. So our downtimes are kind of like the summer then, right? Um, and so I thought, yeah, like December and the summer, those are the downtimes I'll move. Well, little did I know, I'm working on a special election. That election is January 10th. Um, so it's been crazy. The move has been crazy. I sleep about 4 hours a night, which is not as much as I'd like to sleep. I can't.
Yes. Do you ever like get a catch up day?
Oh, do I get a catch up day or do I just fall asleep for a day? Like I
That. Yeah,
get
the second one.
it. Is like as if I give myself permission to do that, or like does your body just make you fall asleep? Like you
Yeah.
just. I think it's more the latter, but if we want to be professional about it, sure, I get a catch up day.
You get a catch up day?
Right, exactly. Or it's that Tuesday.
Yeah.
It's my dog that's this happens all the time. So my dog
Yeah. Your dog's always on the live stream. It's part of the live stream now.
part of the live stream, and then it causes everyone else's dog to
Yeah.
bark. And I apologize,
Cece didn't twitch. She's like, "Oh, it's Sue's dog again."
Toby. Um, so yes. So that's what's happening right now in my world. But on top of all that, I have been, as you know, working on something else, something even bigger. Because you get to a certain point in your life and you think to yourself, what is it that matters, right? Like what is the big thing? Like, what have you come to at this point? Um, what is it that you want to leave your name on? And I think that's weird, obviously, for me to say, since I have 3 companies that I named after myself. But I guess that's not, I don't want to say that's not enough, but it's not deep enough, I guess.
Hmm.
Something even beyond the work that I do, which I do because they're causes that I personally believe in. Um, it gets to a point where people ask you, Sue, help me solve this problem. Help me solve this problem. This is a huge problem. And I have been saying for a long time, that's not what I do. I get that this is a problem. I understand. I don't think, I don't do that. I can't do everything. And enough people ask, and they're like, but you can do this. You can do this other thing. And I'm like, can I? You know, crazy. Like, look at me. Look at me. Like, literally look at me. Like, I'm like breaking out in hives. But I recently decided to completely do something else, and it is actually part of the reason I'm moving from DC to New York. And I see it as kind of the next phase of my life. And for people that, people ask you, like, how can you possibly be doing something else and won't the other things that you're doing suffer? And I said, well, no, that the latter will never happen. And how can I do something else? It's like, um, the, what really weighs heavily on my mind is that there's only one Beastie Boy left out of three,
Yeah.
and I think I know that sounds like a weird analogy, but like, I really, I think there's only one Beastie Boy left. And what I mean by that is just like, there's only so much time left, there's only so much time left, and time goes by fast, and we shouldn't take it for granted. And how much time do I have left to leave a legacy that I want to leave, the impact that I want to leave on this world, and the movement that I work with, which is a freedom-based movement, based on that we all have our rights to be who we want to be, that we are able to be free of government intervention, but also that we don't have one half of the country controlling the other half of the country, that we
Hmm.
should be free to make the choices the way we want to live, the way we want to school our children, the way we want to conduct our business, the way we want to be. And so it became a bigger question when people started asking me, Sue, can you help me with this other problem? And after years of saying no, I think now I'm trying to say, how can I make that a yes?
And
Yeah,
notice how she framed the question to herself, how can I? Not can I, but how can I? So the decision's been made that you will, and now you've got to figure out how.
that's right.
You're like programming your brain to come up with a solution at that point when you're sleeping for the 4 hours a day you get to sleep.
You will things to happen in your life. Like, if you don't wake up and say, I will do things that will make this happen, then the thing's actually never going to happen because you haven't laid out an intention for it to happen, right? So it's
Hmm.
never about whether something will happen or if something is going to happen. Because if you're there considering the if of something, whether something's going to happen for you, then you're not ready for that thing to happen to you, because
Hmm.
you're still considering you're still considering a future world where there's a possibility that that thing won't happen. In my mind, when I decide to do something, that future world, that alternate universe, that timeline has disappeared.
Hmm.
It doesn't exist anymore. So the only timelines going forward for me are how this is going to happen. Obviously, there's many paths to that. Some of them are more painful than others, right?
Yes.
I mean, that is the truth, right? But it doesn't matter what it is. And this applies to anything in your life, I believe, like whether it's, helping your child get through a difficult patch, or, something academically that you're trying to learn. Like, I tried to learn to crochet during the pandemic, right? And, the first couple times I'm trying to make this little animal and it came out like really, I'm like thinking, this is wrong, right?
This is not an animal.
You know, you have to, at some point, like you want to ignore the fact that you have to pull out the crochet stitches, right? You want to just keep going, right? But
Yeah.
for anyone that crochets, you know that never, that path never gets you back to right,
Yeah.
because once you're wrong in counting the stitches, you can't forward stitch your way out of it, which I learned very quickly. And but the thing is, like, it wasn't ever like, okay, I can't do this. It was clear that I wasn't very fast at picking it up, but was, even though I was like, how can I be bad at this? But I just knew I had to pull out all the stitches. And when you come to grips with that timeline, that timeline where Sue's going to pick this thing up and yank out, but what day is that, going to be? But I know that that's the future. And it's just a matter of accepting it, right?
Yeah.
But my point is that, I went from saying no to saying yes. And now I'm going to make it happen. And it may take the rest of my life to make it happen. I don't think it will. I mean, that's also just not what I've fathomed in my mind, because I've now gone through the course of like meeting a lot of people that the pieces are falling in place to make it happen. So now, of course, you guys are like, what is it that she's...
Wait, let's start here. Let's keep them in suspense a little longer. What problem are you solving? What problem is Sue going to solve now?
So, I work a lot in the digital space, and there's been something that's been bothering me and a lot of the people I work with. And that is that in order for us to exist in the world, we do rely on certain basic tools that we will never not need. Things like email, things like web storage space, hosting space. For those of you that run a business, credit card processing, all kinds of things. And you start thinking about all these basic software. The problem, just like with social media, and I think some of you will see where I'm going with this, is that most of these companies are owned by people of a certain political mind frame. And these are people who actually believe that there is a relativity in the definition of terms of service or in First Amendment rights. They don't have a firm idea or belief in what that means. They believe that they can choose at any time to say your concept or your messages, whether that has to be about firearms or raw milk or a whole host of other topics, just being Christian in some cases, doesn't coincide, let's just say, with our terms of use, and you can no longer use our platform. So a lot of you guys are familiar, for example, with the Babylon Bee, right? Their website, it's a comedy site, right? It's a
They're hilarious.
It's hilarious. Maybe you don't think it's hilarious, but regardless,
I think it's hilarious.
But regardless of whether you think they're funny, let's just establish that it's a satire. It's a joke. It's like the Onion, right?
It's fake news, like literally fake news.
The whole thing is that nothing is written there is true, and everybody knows that. Just like when you go to the Onion, everybody knows that none of the headlines in the Onion are true. They don't have to say that in every headline because you just know that the Onion is a satire, just like Babylon Bee is. So Babylon Bee was deplatformed or removed from using MailChimp. MailChimp is the largest email platform in the world. It's 66% of market share, right? They decided that Babylon Bee violated their terms of service because they just incite untruthfulness. But the point is, they get to decide that definition, right? So that's a problem because they keep changing their terms of service and their rules, and they basically get to decide what the rules are. The second problem that a lot of my clients don't realize is that the owners of MailChimp and Salesforce, which is a large platform that people use for customer relations, a lot of these platforms are then owned by CEOs who are the biggest donors to the Democratic party. Like Salesforce is the #1 CRM platform, for example. It's owned, or the CEO is a man named Mark Benioff. He was one of Barack Obama's biggest donors. He believes that we should house all the homeless people. He believes that the border should be open. Now, I'm not here to argue about whether you believe or don't believe those things. But if you disagree with that, think about what's happening, right? You are forced to use a platform because it has market domination. There's really no replacement for Salesforce. You are essentially using, let's say, your campaign or nonprofit, a donor dollar that they gave you to fight a certain cause, that's then lining the pocket of someone who's donating to a cause diametrically opposed to yours. In other words, your dollars are not donor safe. You're literally funding your
You're funding your opponents.
There is no other alternative. So
Right.
you can see why my clients have been begging me for years to produce the alternative. And obviously my pushback is building a Salesforce or building a MailChimp or building even web hosting to fight AWS, which is the Amazon Web Service, which is owned by Jeff Bezos. That is like a monumental task, right? That's like asking someone to can you build the alternative to Disney World, right? Yeah. I mean, that is not an easy, you don't go into the business of amusement parks very, willy-nilly. That's not a business you just enter, right? It's a high barrier to entry. There's a lot of things to consider. But I finally decided, you know what? This is worth doing, because my fear is that there is no longer a place where the definition of freedom and rights are being defined in a way that I find satisfactory and that a lot of people find satisfactory. It's not about judging people. It's about just saying, this is a judge-free place, or a place where we believe in a foundation of freedom. And it won't be that one day you can use our service and then the next day, because the winds of culture have changed, we suddenly find you untenable or unsavory for some reason. Because when you have that kind of relative moralism, what those people don't understand is one day you could be on the wrong side of it. There's no stake.
It happened repeatedly, and every time it happens, it's like squee, and you're like, well, did we not say that was going to happen? And then they don't remember.
I mean, right?
It's we said it was going to happen.
History tells us that something that was favorable morally one century is no longer favorable. I mean, do we not still argue about slavery? Do we not still argue about? I mean, these are things that we found acceptable just a couple centuries ago, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm not saying that anything that we're doing is the equivalent of slavery, but what I'm saying is that we can't build a society where you're letting a group of people constantly define what is a tenable framework, but then also let those people define whether or not you can do business. Because if we don't build the alternative now, so basically, I think of it like Noah's Ark, right? You can't wait until you have to have Noah's Ark.
Yeah.
Building it. You can't wait that long. So it's too late, right, at that point. And so my goal right now is to find enough people who support this concept, and that with the idea that at some point we may need our own freedom-founded web hosting. We may need our own freedom-founded, for all I know, we may need hardware, phones that are built by people who are freedom-founded, that we may need a whole set of things, because our lives depend on these things, right? We will never get to a point where we don't need things, at least I don't believe, things like web hosting, email, payment processors, computer hardware, hard drives, things like that, just, thinking down the road. Now, am I going to solve this problem in my lifetime? I'm clearly not going to. But again, going back to that concept of Noah's Ark, if somebody doesn't set forth to do it, by the time we need these solutions, it's going to be too late. So there's a lot of people out there that are that have been working on this problem. So
Yeah.
I don't want to pretend that I'm the first one who had this thought, because of course I am not. The problem is that they're scattered all over the place. And a lot of them, of course, are mired in the political space, because that's where you think of this first, like, oh, let me build a tool for Republican candidates, right? Because that's where the thought kind of makes the most sense at the beginning. But there's also groups that they don't want to use a product that's made for political campaigns, because they're not political. This isn't about politics. They actually don't want to be associated with a product like that, right? And they don't want to be Republican or Democrat, right? In terms of the products that they choose. They just want to be free, right? They just want to be outside of that whole system.
Right.
And so, where I am right now is just trying to figure out the demand for it, trying to figure out what features people need. And then just also as someone who has long been in the digital space and work with a lot of clients who have just a lot of basic service complaints about MailChimp and contact, and just like, well, I hate these products anyway. Like, we just want you to build a better one. So it's also about,
like, literally got that feedback immediately in the comments, right? I hate MailChimp.
And there's some things that, I wish it did, and a lot of us wish it did, in terms of dashboard and reporting and tracking, that it just simply doesn't do. But it's also because it's a tool meant to serve, 67% of society, and it's never going to do everything that everybody wants. I mean, no tool is going to, because when you're trying to serve that many people, it just, it's just impossible. So how can you help?
Well, let me introduce what this is about. So this is Tag from Life Done Free. He is one of the people who founded freestudying.com. And freestudying.com is trying to solve that same problem for social networks.
Yep.
Right? And it's a really, you should check it out. They're in their startup phase, but you should check it out if you haven't gone there already. He has already gotten a pretty good group of people together who may be really interested in what you're working in, because they're the people who don't necessarily want it to be political, because they're just sick of the whole thing, but they just want it to work, and they're tired of supporting causes they don't support with their dollars, and they're tired of worrying about being censored for living their lives. So yes, how can he help? He probably can help you a lot.
No, that is a fantastic question. So right now, where I am is that I have I'm collecting people who are interested in the concept, because what I have is what any business person have is I have a funding problem. So I'm just being, flat out honest with everyone. What I have is I've been working with a couple funders, essentially in the venture capital space. And what I need to prove to them right now is proof of demand. So, we've mocked up a product where we're trying to get funding. So essentially I'm in that kind of fundraising phase. And Nicole, I'm trying to find the link that I sent you today.
Oh, I just put it on the thing. I just put it in the comments. Yeah.
So I don't even know where that is. So there's a link that you can.
It keeps pasting your name in, though.
It's like, so without my name, just the website here.
Yeah, don't put her name in there. Yeah. So here we go.
But if you go there, and let's say you own a business or a group, you have a community group that does use a product like MailChimp or any of its equivalent, and you think you would be interested in that, there's just like 2 or 3 questions that ask, like, how many people are in your email list? Would this be something that you're interested in? And I'm essentially right now just trying to prove to my funders that there would be interest in these alternative products. And then I'm also just here to listen, to answer questions, to get feedback, because obviously, no good product at least is built in a vacuum, where I want to hear what are your concerns about the future of technology, of just philosophically about the space, or even just technical questions like, what do you hate about MailChimp? Like, I would love to hear about that. But I want Nicole to be able to also drive the conversation. But I think, to me, I tried to kind of give you guys like the reason for why I wanted to do it on a big level. It's a very different path for me. I've never built a product, sold a product. I'm in a services company. I'm not a SaaS company, which is a service, a software as a service.
Yeah.
So this is a new ground for me, but it is something that I'm very excited about. I think, life takes you where it's going to take you. And, going into becoming hopefully a tech CEO, I guess, is, it's like, the people fund you, they have the idea, and they're like, who's going to be the CEO? And I'm like, everyone's like looking under the table. No.
Making eye contact.
Who's this? No, it's the biggest question people have is how can you possibly do that and run the Zoldak agency? And that is never a question that I feel like scares me, because I just know it can be done. With the right people around you. It's when you have the right people around you, anything is possible. And it's just
That's so true.
the most important skill I feel like in my life is knowing how to surround yourself with the right people. Most of the people that I hire, I meet just kind of randomly. I interview people for roughly about 10 to 15 minutes. And I either hire them or I don't. And it's never usually because they apply for a role or they have a particular role in mind. I have an art director right now that has never been an art director. She didn't even think that was a thing. She didn't even know what that meant. And I was like, you know what you should be as an art director. And it just, when you meet a person and you know exactly what they should be doing and how they fit into a puzzle, and you either just see it or you don't. And so that's kind of how I feel it's possible to become a tech CEO while running an ad agency, while doing these other things, because I know that in my path, I will find the right people that will fill in the spaces.
Yeah, I think so. It's funny because I've worked at tech startups, and I think that's a better approach than many of the startups I worked at, where it was a lot of hiring for resume.
Right.
And at the end of the day, when you're starting anything from scratch, you need people who are going to crawl on their bellies in the mud through whatever happens to get to the other side of the challenge. And they need to pull the team with them. And if you don't have that, it doesn't matter how much they did in their past life.
The thing is, almost anyone can learn any skill. I really want to say that again, because a lot of people do not believe in this. A lot of people believe in the opposite.
Yeah.
I believe that almost anyone can learn almost any skill. Now, am I going to become an NBA basketball player? No. But so yes, are there exceptions to that? For those of you that have met me, I'm 5 feet tall. So not that that's the only thing keeping me from being a basketball player. Excuse me.
It's just one of them. It's the most visually obvious, right?
But the thing is, you have to be able to see beyond what's on somebody's resume, which means in real life, like for those of you that don't think about hiring and building teams, like I do, but how does that apply to you on a day-to-day basis? Is you just have to see beyond what somebody does, outwardly or day to day. To me, those are really superficial things, right? It's whether or not I feel like someone can be a part of that puzzle and pick up and be part of that team and work within, like, is that person going to row the boat in the direction that we're all going? And is that person like dead weight,
Yeah.
And that really has nothing to do with like skills or a resume. That has to do with, when we're looking around and, I'm the head of my company and, like we're building like a set for our event or things like that, like I will still be the person that offers to go to Starbucks, or I will, like, whatever needs to be done is done. Like, it doesn't matter. I don't make
Yeah.
people go to Starbucks for me. You know what I mean? And it's like you want to find people who just like aren't mired in like that outward, like, who is this person and what is their role exactly, you know, what are their skill sets, what are their past experiences, like, and believe me, definitely as a non-white woman working in politics, you know, nothing irks me more than when somebody gets a job or gets credit for something because they're all, and I apologize for everyone that's called, but a older white man. You know, I mean, it is a world. I work in a world where there are just a lot of people who exist, you know, well beyond when they should exist because of that one thing. It's like, well, that person's obviously better because they have the experience, they're in kind of the club, they know all the right people. But at the end of the day, like, that's not how I would pick my team, you know?
Yeah.
And I think, you know, that's how I believe that anything is possible, because I also I don't pick my teammates that way. And so I think, you know, when you see the world in that different way, like, you really believe that anything is possible. Because I believe, like, you know, there's people out there that can do anything at any age, at any level of experience. And it just, when you think of it that way, you know, there's, the world opens up so much farther, to have so much more possibility than I think if you don't see it that way.
Yeah, you're getting me thinking now. I know a lot of people trying to solve the big picture problem you're trying to solve, right? Like, I know you, I know Tag, who's doing freesteading. I know people working on hosting. I know people working on payment processing. And when are we all getting into one room together?
I that's what I hope. You know, I want more people to work together on this, because I think it doesn't help, again, that if we work apart, right?
Right.
And it just, it's again, I think of that concept of Noah's Ark. Like, if we all build just tiny little boats, we're not going to get anywhere. We won't survive. You know,
Right.
we're not going to survive. We all have to build the boat together.
So is there anything that you're planning for that, or do we need to have a day at Self Reliance Festival dedicated to tech? Like, what are we
I
doing?
would love that. I mean, I would love that, because I really think, like, there there's a lot to be said. You know, the concept of technology in terms of, you know, shelter, of safety. I mean, just like you build a pantry, you know, for the future, and
Right.
just like a lot of people that, you know, talk about homesteading with you, it's about how can you be independent, how can you not have all your eggs in this one basket, how can you not put your destiny in the control of other people who don't believe in the mind view that you do. And how dangerous is that going forward? You know, so whether or not we all get along politically is, again, it's actually just not even relevant to this conversation, because to me this isn't in in a political realm that I'm talking about this. It's just that, you know, right now everything we touch, is built, is, the tech world just leans so far the other way, and they have full control over it, and to the point where, you know, we're talking about, like, well, we can't build Disney World because it's so difficult. I mean, like, we won't be able to go to Disney World then. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, is that option going to be off the table? And so I worry about that.
I actually I want to bring something to your attention. It's the Next Steps conference, Build the Parallel Society, happening in February in Georgia.
That's a great, that's a great um, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
There's a lot of conferences, and there's a lot
Yeah.
of events that the group I'm working with too. Like, we're trying to plan. Like, right now, earlier this evening, we were talking about maybe doing like a hackathon at South by
Yeah.
Southwest this year. But again, for conservatives, or, you know, I don't even want to use that word conservative, but for freedom lovers, because again, this is about like trying to bring these people together and bring these people out of the woodwork. I've just recently met a guy named Andrew who runs a company called Red Balloon, and what he does is really amazing. I don't know if you.
I think I've met him.
Andrew Caput. I'm going to pronounce his last name wrong. It's like Caput. Yeah. But
why do I know that name?
It's essentially like an Indeed. It's like a jobs board for people who don't want to work at woke companies. And also for companies who want to post jobs and don't want to hire people who are going to ruin their culture with woke demands, right? And there's a lot of people that are exiting tech companies right now, exiting lots of big companies because they just don't want the indoctrination or the demands of the workplace that their workplace is putting on them. They feel like, well, I just want to do my job, but I don't also want to attend this conference on, this certain type of behavior, or that this way I have to accept this kind of thinking or that kind of thinking. Like, I just want to code, or I just want to, do this. Like, I don't, all this cultural stuff that I have to participate in at my job is just, I'd rather not. Like, if I can find another job that I can do X, Y, and Z, whether it's marketing, whether it's coding, whether it's accounting, where I don't have to participate in this kind of cultural programming, then I'd rather find that job. And that's what Andrew's website, Red Balloon, does. And so I think there's a huge movement for people to, these people have been afraid for a really long time to speak up, right? And
now they are
actually leave the economy, right? And that's not always tenable for some people. And so, this idea goes along with that idea in the sense that, well, we don't want to leave the economy in the sense of like, we don't want to be like, well, there's no mail alternative for us. There's no hosting alternative for us because, AWS will deplatform us, or these people will stop processing our credit cards because we sell guns or ammunition, or, even like tactical wear, right? Or
I mean, it's absurd because I said something on YouTube that somebody doesn't like. Done.
I mean, but the point is the needle keeps moving as to what is acceptable, right? You don't know what that is. One day it's this, the other day it's that, and so you don't, like, God forbid you plan a gathering in Washington, D.C. on January 6th, like, ever again, for whatever reason, right?
I know. Bad date.
Do it like a birthday party or wedding, or you know what I'm saying? Like, the point is, you don't know, like, that in itself is triggering to the censors, right? Like, oh my gosh, like, you cannot have a party on January 6th. That obviously means you're trying to dethrone the government. Like, you have no idea. Like, my point is, you don't know what is going to become the next problem for you and your business, or just whatever it is that you're going about your day doing, right? So it just, people have, so I would love, I mean, for it to be more mainstream, for people to say, hey, we want this alternative, and for it not to be considered an alternative, but just a different choice. And that people who want to build these tech tools for one side, that they get together. I would love for anybody, in your network who is in the tech space or is interested in these topics to feel free to reach out to me, because that's what we're doing, is like building this community, right? Just like you have built this community with LFTN, I really want to help pull all these people together and build this community of people who want to solve these problems, which are big problems. It's going to take a lot of people, a lot of money, a lot of investors, a lot of great ideas to try to solve. And I'm not going to pretend that I can do that, because I will be the first person to say this isn't even what I do. Right?
Well, it takes the economy. It takes the people using the things that come out of there, right? Where when all of the big, like, splash with deplatforming happened and AWS shut down, it was Trump, I think, that made a lot of people open their eyes. Parler shut down. There was a lot of talk about where do I move? I had a lot of people reach out because I was doing web development. Where do I move my website? Where do I move my email? And it's like, well, there are these better options, but they're just less bad right now because they're still dependent on AWS, even though they don't philosophically align. Like, so there's been, I think, a lot of movement in the last couple of years, just trying to account for that. And it's, I think our networks really overlap on this one, where there's people dying. They're like, take my money, take my money,
I mean,
give me email.
The thing is, though, I think there's a lot of people too who aren't even aware this is a problem per se, because that's just not where their mind is in terms of thinking about things that way. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, people don't worry about these things because you just don't think of it. But, there are people who, when I tell them, that like who MailChimp donates money to or who they invite to speak at their annual meeting, for example, like if you want to be scared, like go and look up last year's MailChimp's annual meeting report and just keep scrolling past the business statistics and all that stuff. And then keep scrolling, like just keep on scrolling until you get, to some things I think are going to shock you. Maybe not, but you're going to be like, what is this? Right? And like I thought this was just an email company, but this is every company, right? And the point is, maybe you are fine with the product, but maybe you just don't want your money, your hard-earned money, to go there. Because if you work so hard to support a certain ideal that you're teaching your children and you're living your whole life again, for, and then you have to buy all these services that essentially is like a donation, because that's what companies are doing, right? Every company now is not just doing what they're doing. Like they don't just make shoes or they don't just make coffee. They have to make coffee and something else, right?
And benefit.
And something else. That's like a requirement now, right? And so if you don't like that and something else, you're trapped. It's like a fee, right? It's like a duty that you're paying, a tax.
Yeah.
That you're paying. And the question is, do you want to pay that tax? You have to, or not, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Okay, so you've worked with a lot of libertarians, and you've seen what it's like when libertarians that have subtle differences in opinions get in one room together and start talking about said subtle differences of opinion.
Yes.
How do we set up the network for this where that doesn't happen? Because I've also worked with a lot of tech people, and subtle differences of opinion can turn into lifelong enemy-making things. When, it's like we're arguing about what's worse, communism or fascism. Like, does it matter? Does not matter.
Right.
Both bad.
I mean, the thing that I hope that we move forward with is that, essentially the principle here is freedom and free markets, right? Mm-hmm. And what that means is that, one, that there's choice in the marketplace, and two, that there's information, right, to make that choice. And what I think is lacking right now, more so than anything else, is that information. I don't think people are being given the information to make that choice, and to understand the products that they're buying. So just like, now, just like now people say, well, I won't shop at, so-and-so, or I won't. Yeah. Some people say they won't go to Chick-fil-A, or some people, but
I've got people who won't use Google products anymore.
Right.
And so they're on Proton Mail sending to Gmail addresses, which means they're back on Google, because what are you going to do?
People are there in that kind of mindset, but they aren't there in terms of the concept I'm talking about, which is this dollar spend, right? The kind of taxation that we're under. And they might not realize, like, I think there has to be way more transparency, and their website's starting to do this. One of them is called Second Vote, where can search up any company and you can see like the political leaning of all the employees, donations and things like that. But I think it's, information is freedom, right? So you can make an informed choice. And I think the other thing that is launching simultaneously, which it was launching this summer, but due to some things that happened to me this summer, it's been postponed to next year, which is actually just a magazine in and of itself called Vera Causa, Vera Causa News, which it means kind of your true cause in Latin. And it is going to be a tech magazine that covers these issues like the tech bias, tech ownership, who really is behind some of the companies that you use, what are some of the censorship issues that you may or may not heard of. And then if you have personal stories of censorship or deplatforming, like we're hoping to, solicit those stories and have people share their stories. Because there's a lot of people who are spending millions of dollars a year, millions, with Salesforce and MailChimp that are actually being told to get off the platform. So this is a big deal. So it's not just about little companies, but these people are willing to turn down millions of dollars to not send the messages of certain people that they're selecting. And this is a society that we're getting to. And we can complain about it and say that's unfair or it's illegal. It's not really. But the point is, what are we going to do, though? What are we going to do? And there's also people who are just, how do we get off the cloud, right? So, there's people who just don't want to be on the cloud at all with their data or their services, which I think is a valid concern. So, my dream one day is to, just like Google, have that ship out there.
Yeah.
Because we all have to realize there's no such thing as the cloud. I mean, everybody's data actually sits on basically a giant carrier in these boxes, and it's floating out there. It's floating out in the water because there's no, it's not in the air, right? So the server has to sit somewhere. So it's about owning that property, right? And it is physical property. So it's about all of that. And it's about where do we go? It's like rediscovering the West. It's like we have to go out there and we have to make our new land.
Yeah, and we have to realize, like in the West, like there were some big fights in the West, but there was also neighbors who don't agree with neighbors helping neighbors when they actually needed help, because the core priority wasn't necessarily, do I agree about this one thing or not? And that's where anytime you have a big problem like this to solve, you're going to have so many people coming at it from so many different angles. Like, I've been really enjoying watching the Musk takeover of Twitter, because people are losing their minds. But I don't necessarily trust Elon Musk more than anybody else. Don't know the dude, right? But at the same time, now it's coming out. So your timing's perfect. It's coming out how much censorship was happening on that platform,
of course,
which we all knew was going on.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, it's perfect to start talking about alternatives to that stuff. It's the perfect time.
I mean, in any company, people are making decisions about their product and about other people. You're never going to take that away. There's never going to be a such and such company where you have complete and utter what we call fairness. Because again, everybody's definition of fairness and right is different, right? You're always going to have, now I don't think these should be in emails. I'm like reading all these things. I'm like, pick up the, like crisis 101, like pick up the phone, like don't email people. Like, is this legal? Like, is this under our terms of service? Like, please don't do that.
But they will.
But anyway, you're always going to have people at a company going, can we do this? Should we do this? That's always going to be the case, just practically. Whether you're a cupcake company or you're Twitter, right? Should we make this flavor cupcake? I don't know. Should we put this ingredient in it? I don't, like it makes them taste better or it's cheaper. Why should we not? Right? You're always going to have that. But the point is, right now we have those decisions being made by only one set of people, and one kind of person. And so again, it's like you said to me. I think your comment about the Wild West is really really important. I really like that idea. It's like when you collect people that are very disparate, but around the idea of survival, right? Of like, you have to work together to get this to work.
Yeah.
And whether we don't all agree on everything, we're not going to survive out here, and we want to build something. And
Yeah.
I think that that is the concept here, is that we want to build something. We need to build it to survive. It is going to take a long time. Not everyone's going to make it. I mean, I don't want to be dramatic, but it's like it's going to be a long road. But again, my fear is that we don't take that road at all, right? And that there's a lot of people, it's not just, a few of us that feel this way. There's a lot of people that feel this way. And, we need our own cloud. We need our own email services. We need our own things that are run a different way.
And we're going to have to bring the crypto guys in. We are.
I mean, we're going to need everything. So I just think, it's what, I don't have all the answers, right? I just know that this problem has been presented to me and put in front of me for a very long time. And that I have decided to work on the problem. I don't know if I'll be able to solve it. I know that I've now been working with a lot of people that are trying to do a lot of these things, and I hope to meet more people.
Yeah, well, I find it interesting as we talk about this that you and I have a complementary skill in networking, where we're good at bringing people together and helping them see past the little things into working together. Tag from Life Done Free, same skill. And we know it's like we could almost all just put our heads together and start figuring that network part out. And when the network's there, I think you start seeing the solutions. Of course, I'm the person who thinks community solves every problem. So, I'm just really excited that you're doing this. I've been excited for a while about it, and I'm glad you have had time to come on and tell us what you mean. Because I'm like, Sue's doing this email thing.
Yes. Everyone has been asking, I'm sorry, like there's pen all over my hand.
Okay.
Like, when is it gonna be? And, I have all the pieces together except that, my pesky venture capitalists, I was telling Nicole, like, it's been a long time since I've had a boss, so essentially, it's very hard to report to someone for me. I'm sure you guys can imagine I'm a little kicking and screaming about it, but I have someone who holds the checkbook, so to speak, a much bigger checkbook than is needed than one can imagine, I'm sure, to make this come off the ground or lift off the ground. So what I need more than anything from the network is proof of demand, right? So if you know anybody who you think might be interested in this, please share the link, have them sign it. It's not a commitment to anything to purchase. It's just an interest to say, hey, I am interested. I do use email. This kind of concept does interest me, so that I can show the people who are backing these concepts that if we do spend the money to build this, there will be people.
Somebody interested in using it.
Right. That I'm not just making up demand. That we're building a product that nobody wants. So the only thing that I need right now is just, that kind of
people signing up, and then you are going to get emails from her.
Just people
over a listserv, as a matter of fact.
People saying, yeah, I'm interested in this. And then when we're ready to launch,
we're going to tell you.
We'll tell you, and then you can beta test it, this and that, and then you'll be the first to know when it launches. But it won't launch unless I can prove to people that it is wanted.
Yeah, Yep. So guys, if you're interested in this, I've already put the link in the comments of the YouTube live, and it's definitely in the show notes. It's Vera, Vera, Causa, CAUSA.news/, hold on, early-access-2. So that's easier to click on than to say, but it's not that hard to say either. So it's definitely there. I'm just highlighting it on the thing. Sue, it's always fun to talk to you. We're at about an hour. So I'm going to ask you one like completely out of left field question. So
I love it.
What is your favorite room that you've decorated in your new apartment in New York, and why?
Oh my gosh. So like I this is when I feel like I'm in the wrong career, right? Where like, sometimes you're like, what people always like, what would you be if you weren't what you were? And I have that clear answer to that, which is like to be an interior designer.
Yeah.
But in my daughter's room, I have this kind of cloud wallpaper put up that's like kind of snowing in her room. And she now has a bunk bed so that she can have friends over. That's a little bit more room because obviously going to a Manhattan apartment, we're a little bit smaller in space, but it's turned out really well. I'm excited for her to see it. She has not seen it. So she's going to see it next week, and she's super, super excited. And I'm super excited to show it to her. But that so far is my favorite thing that's happened. There's really not much else that's happened there except for a couple lamps, because otherwise it'd be really dark. But
yeah, I love how you approach moving into a house. You seem to have zero emotional attachment to any piece of furniture you own right now. And you go and you look and you're like, this is the furniture that should be here. So that furniture can go, and I'm going to put this other furniture in.
I wouldn't say I have zero emotional attachment to the furniture I own, but it is hard. My daughter is so happy about moving to New York. We're so happy about moving to New York that, when you give up one thing, you gain another, and you kind of go with life. This will be the first time really since I was 16 that I don't own a car. And so that was actually the hardest thing for me to wrap my mind around. I've already, but I never thought I would come to accept that, I guess. And I have, I'm like, next week I'm handing over the keys, and I'm just going to be carless. And that to me was like a really hard thing at first. I was like, how am I going to do that? And that was actually the number one question I got from the people who know me, was like, how are you possibly
car rental places here somewhere.
I'm just a huge car person. But it just, the idea sticks to you. So I guess, again, how do I make that relevant to people? It's like, you think you are in love with one part of your life, right? You think that this is like what makes me. Like for me, driving my car is something that made me really happy. It's how I unwind. I would just like take it out and drive. And like, I'm that person who like from the time I was 16 would like spend the weekend waxing my car and read Car Driver magazine. I went to auto shows. So I'm like a real car enthusiast. And so, you think that something is like, this is such an integral core piece of my life. How can I possibly let go of being a car person? But then when you take something away like that, things just fill in around that. And if you are open to that and you let that space get filled in with something else, like I've come to like such a realization that there's so many things I can have access to in New York that I wasn't able to do now. I feel like I'm going to be walking a lot more. I feel like I'm going to be outdoors a lot more. There's so many things, obviously, my daughter and I want to do in terms of the arts. And so all of that kind of just like filled up that, what I thought was going to be kind of a little bit of a heartbreak, which it was for a little bit. I know it sounds superficial, but you love what you love, as Selena Gomez says, like your heart wants what it wants. So let your heart want something else, and it will.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And it's funny because the podcast is about building the life you choose on your terms. And I talk about my life, which is kind of the polar opposite of Sue's, where I live out here and I grow stuff and raise livestock and all of this outside homestead mess. But this isn't the only way to live. The way Sue wants to live is going to be in Manhattan where she can, you know, walk down the street and get food from a restaurant at any point that she wants to. And it's a very different lifestyle, but it's the lifestyle she chooses. And so every decision you've made has led you there. And I think that's cool because there are different, different flavors for everybody.
I,
And I think we get really hyper focused on homesteading here, which is cool because I know about that. But at the same time,
I
the
don't.
life you choose means the life you choose, no matter what anybody else thinks about it. They what they think doesn't matter.
Oh yeah, definitely that. And I don't. I know we talk all the time about like you and me and like how we met and that story.
Yeah,
I won't repeat again here. So we've talked about it several times on the podcast. But I don't think you and I are that different, though. I know,
not at the core. No.
like, I know our lifestyles are technically different, and
Yeah.
like, I've got like neon yellow nails right now. But,
Well, I'm wearing jewelry. Look.
but like, I like keep going like this and seeing like it's obviously really stark. But I think that what draws us together and what makes us great friends is that we really believe in that
Yeah.
you let life lead you where it leads you. And when I watched you transform from the person that I first met you and what you did into who you are now and starting your coffee business, and I find that you and I are so similar in that way because it's just you choose to do things that you're passionate about and that you want to do, and you let life guide you, but also you designed it exactly the way you want to be, which is, I think, something that I do as well. And
Yes, you do.
and we're both like really strong women, which I'm happy about. I think no, I mean I don't think that's an unimportant thing. This world needs those role models to show people that a woman can make these choices and can make life decisions and be the person who makes those choices, and is the person who establishes that household and that stronghold. And I think that's a role model that's so important.
Yeah. And I think we forget household a lot in our society, how important that is.
Hmm.
Like, I think probably because you ended up being a single mom, that probably really brought home the need to do that
Yes.
more than any other
You don't
thing
have any other
for your daughter.
Yeah, you don't
Yeah.
have another option.
Yeah.
And it's really hard. It's something obviously that um, it's still a struggle. Like every day, you think it may not look like quote unquote that I struggle on a daily basis, but of course I do, because it's like I don't have anyone else to take out the garbage but me. I don't have anyone else to go to the grocery
Mhm.
store but me. If I need to hang a shelf, if I need to move a heavy box, if I need to, it's me, like
Yeah.
me, and there's me,
Yeah.
there's whose turn is it to do laundry? It's mine.
It's mine.
I mean, like, yes, my daughter does this thing, but you know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like, there's a
Yeah.
big difference when it's like, well, let's divvy up the chore list. Oh, guess who's doing the taxes? Guess who's doing the,
Yeah.
this? Guess who's doing it's that's also me. Like so
I bet you outsource some of that.
a little bit, but at the same
Yeah.
time, it's like all of those things are in my mind all the time, which is,
Yeah.
is obviously the biggest difference when you have a village with you. Like I've also never had my parents close by in terms of like living near me.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
I'm really lucky and happy and blessed to have the holler neighbors because it isn't always just me. A lot of people do a lot of things here.
and that's just so important. And of course, I'm joking to some degree. Like of
Right.
course, like no one is just a village unto themselves. And obviously, I make it work because I have to outsource things,
Mhm.
because I don't have another choice. But it's important for people to recognize that what you see people doing, on social media or you look at people and you think, well, that person can't possibly struggle or possibly have any problems or this or that. It's like, of course they do. Of course it's difficult. Of course, like I don't sleep very much, but it's okay,
Yeah.
because like, again, like I have one life to live, and this is a life I've chosen to.
Well, and it's not really human nature to whip out the camera and take a picture of all the problems,
Oh,
right?
right.
The next thing we'll see is if you guys are doing gingerbread houses again this year, we're going to see the pretty gingerbread houses. We're not going to see what mess was made in your kitchen behind the pretty
Oh,
gingerbread
a huge,
houses.
a huge mess. And
Right, because that's the way gingerbread houses work.
no,
Right.
you don't see the sausage making. You don't show people that. You don't, I think some people are a lot better at showing that they're vulnerable than others. But that's why, when I'm on Facebook, like I try to share with you guys, obviously a lot of the wonderful things, and a lot of you guys love to hear and have watched my daughter grow up since birth and
Yeah.
demand to find, ask about how she's doing. My daughter feels like she has paparazzi because places, people, even at like work conferences, they'll be like, oh my gosh, how is such and such going? Like, I've watched you go from this to this. And it's almost like people are like, can I get your autograph? She's like, how do these people know everything about me? I'm like, yeah, but, they followed it so long, I can't stop. Like
Right.
I can't stop telling the story. They want to know.
They demand to know. Your public needs you.
Like, of course, there's a lot of things that I don't share that are really difficult, but I do
Yeah.
try to, I've shared, with you guys. I mean, not on your podcast, but I do on my Facebook. My mom did pass away, suddenly, recently. And so I do talk about that, and how difficult that is.
Yeah.
So I do. And I'm willing to do that, because some people are like, why do you talk about those things? But because I want to show people that I'm human, and because there's nothing wrong with being not okay.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong.
That's part of the phase of becoming okay again, is being not okay, realizing you're not okay, and then figuring out what you need to do next. And it's not always easy, but if you don't accept that that is one of the natural states of being human, you can't build anything, I don't think.
No, I think that's great. That's exactly right. I think you can't, if you have a hard time accepting it, you have a hard time asking for help. It took me a long time to realize that, like, people in my network would actually come out and help me if I was in trouble. Like,
Mhm.
in my mind, I was always like, well, they see the professional me, and these aren't people that are really my friends. They're just kind of, like my
Mhm.
personal friends, and they wouldn't really help me if I really needed them. But I was wrong about that. I was really wrong about that. And
Mhm.
so I think you have to come to that realization, though, on your own. You have to trust in it, because I do have people that would come help me if I needed help. And I think I don't actually probably don't ask for help enough. It took me a long time to even realize that anybody would come to help me.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. Well, if people want to follow you or connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, so you can find me on Facebook. I'm friends with Nicole on Facebook, and a couple other people in this group as well. So I'm sure you'll find me, because first of all, my name is unusual, and secondly, you'll see that we have mutual friends, I think. And I'm open to that connection and that personal connection. You can find me professionally on LinkedIn, on Twitter at Sue Zoldak, and then on Instagram, it's a little bit funny. That's where I post more of my, like, this is what I'm doing in my house, and like more of
Yeah.
my design and my art stuff. And I think I'm gonna,
Funny
I
pictures.
never say it. I post it. I'm just gonna warn you. It's a lot of postings of like my clothes and my shoes and my, like, very superficial life, which is what Instagram is. But it's SZQUE2, so it's Susie Q.
Yeah.
With my initials SZ and then QUE2. But you can always, ping me on any of the other things that are a little easier to search for, and I will tell you how to find me in all these other places.
Great. Well, Sue, thanks so much for making time today.
Yeah, no, it's always fun. And I will see you next time, not from this office, hopefully, but from New York.
Awesome. Looking forward to it.
Yep.